Welcome again, adventurers. Okay, there are several new archetypes in the new Battlecry rulebook, and I want to take a look at my favorite 3 in this video. Now, I already did a video on the War Mage class archetype for the Wizard, and then there are, of course, multi-class archetypes for the Commander and Guardian, but these are free archetypes that I'm looking at, and I'm going to start with the Crossbow Infiltrator. The Crossbow Infiltrator is kind of all about having a secret little crossbow hidden on your arm, getting in and making secret kills. It's a very fun build. And the reason I'm drawn to this, like so many things that I'm finding in this book, is because I've kind of tried to build this character before. I have, played around with these, the hand crossbow, the repeating hand crossbow, those kinds of things, trying to make a really cool rogue or toxicologist. And I think a rogue or toxicologist with this archetype is actually what I needed. Let's start with the basic dedication feats. Okay, the Crossbow Infiltrator dedication. You have mastered stealthy weapons that allow you to strike carefully from a distance, far enough to avoid reprisal, yet close enough to confirm your kills. You have familiarity with the gauntlet bow, hand crossbow, and repeating hand crossbow, treating the repeating hand crossbow as a martial weapon for the purposes of proficiency, and the gauntlet bow as a simple weapon. So this is something that would allow someone like the toxicologist, who does not have martial weapon training, to gain access to some of these weapons. If you're at least an expert in any of these weapons, you gain access to that weapon's critical specialization effect. And you gain the Infiltrator's draw reaction. Once per round, you interact to draw a gauntlet bow, hand crossbow, or repeating hand crossbow, then strike with it. Alternatively, you can strike with a loaded hand crossbow or repeating hand crossbow you're already holding, and then interact to stow it. So this is great for those social situations that are about to turn real ugly. You can pull out your weapon and fire with it with one action. Some of the other really fun feats as part of this, the Crescent Cross training. First of all, the Crescent Cross is such a cool weapon. But what I want to get to here is the Crescent Spray. This is nuts, okay? Requirements: you are wielding a Crescent Cross, of course. Effects: you strike, this is 2 actions, by the way. You strike up to 3 times with the ranged version of your Crescent Cross. You can swap it to its range configuration as a free action before attempting these strikes. So that's already like 4 actions right there, like interact to change, and then 3 strikes for 2 actions. Wow. You must have a bolt already chambered for each strike and can interact to swap to a different capacity chamber as a free action between each strike. So this is like draw. I'm sorry, not draw, but change to its melee version. That's what I meant to say. That's 1 action. Strike, reload, or next chamber, strike, next chamber, strike. I think that's like 6 actions for 2 actions. This is absolutely insane. Yes, each attack counts toward your multiple attack penalty, but you do not increase the penalty until you have made all of your attacks. Why would you not do this every single turn? This is just incredible. The level 10 feat Infiltration Assassination is incredibly wicked. With a high priority target in your reach, you quickly move to eliminate them. Make a melee strike using your gauntlet bow as a gauntlet, okay? Melee strike. If the strike is successful, you automatically latch onto the target. Awesome. Giving them the grabbed condition. Then make a ranged strike against them with your gauntlet bow. The strike does not trigger reactions normally triggered by ranged attacks. If you're holding or wearing an injury poison, you can apply it to the bolt used in the attack as a free action before making the ranged strike. This again, okay, so it is a melee strike, a grab, I think swap to range, apply a poison, and then range strike. Also, on an off-guard grab target. So that's like 5 actions for 2 actions. And that would be 2 strikes. So 2 strikes worth of damage plus an injury poison if you have it. That is incredible. And then the other really cool feat that they have here is the level 14 Unseen Shot. Your attacks are deadly, silent, and nearly untraceable. The first time each round that you attempt to strike a target you are undetected or unnoticed by while using a weapon you have familiarity with from this archetype, you are hidden from the target after the attack, as they cannot tell where the attack came from. Talk about something that combines well with being a rogue. So I think this is a great archetype. I mean, it is just so fun. I really like the repeating hand crossbow kind of weapons. I've tried to make some gunslinger builds that had this flavor, but it didn't have all of these additional abilities that, I mean, it still gets there, but I think this is the way to play a sneaky crossbow assassin. This is awesome. Another archetype that I really like is the Field Propagandist. Now, this one is fun because it is a bit more of a support archetype, and a lot of its abilities, at least its earlier abilities, are more exploration-based. Now, this is Battlecry. A lot of the things in here focus on combat, but, you know, the information game is important too. This does remind me a bit of the board game Risk 2210? Yeah, the modern version of Risk where you can go to the moon and stuff like that. And you have commanders, and there's the ambassador commander. And that is actually pretty OP in that game. And we have that a bit in the Field Propagandist. This is sort of all about lying and not accepting lies. So as part of the initial dedication feat, while you are not immune to propaganda, you are resistant to it. You gain a +2 circumstance bonus to your perception DC against attempts made by others to lie to you. That's cool. Then you have this spread propaganda ability. You spread propaganda about a faction, so a group of enemies or allies, I guess, too. This takes as long as it would normally take for you to gather information. At the end of this time, the GM rolls a secret deception check to see the results. On a critical success, your propaganda spreads effectively, and for the next month, creatures that succeed on checks to gather information learn your propaganda over facts about the subject, and it cannot be traced back to you. Success as critical, but the propaganda persists for a week, and it can be traced back to you by a character who critically succeeds at the skill check to gather information. Failure, nothing. Critical failure, well, it doesn't go well. Now, talk about a downtime activity. You don't see many abilities in this game that specify a month duration, so it is kind of cool to see something that is geared outside of combat in this overall very combat-heavy book. You also have Fabricate Truth, and this could be used in combat. You use one action to make something up, and it is so bewildering that the creature can become stupefied 2 for 1 round or stupefied 1 for a round. Another fun ability, getting more into some combat abilities and getting into the support martial or support overall. It doesn't have to be a martial now that I think of it. In fact, you'd probably want to be charisma based for this. So this would be a great, bard or sorcerer archetype to have. Invented vulnerability. Once per round, you list off the potential fears and weaknesses of an enemy you can see or hear, speaking with such certainty that they become real. Attempt a deception check against the enemy's will DC. Select bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage. Regardless of your result, the target is temporarily immune, blah, blah, blah. Critical success. The target gains weakness to the selected type of damage equal to 3 plus half your level. Success. Target gains weakness 5 to the selected type of damage for 1 round. Adding, extra damage to strikes, triggering a weakness that can be exploited by all of your allies. This is a great way to add some support with this free archetype dedication. And then sort of on the flip side of that, you could also choose Invincible Army. Choose an ally you can see and attempt a deception or diplomacy check against the hard DC for the target's level. So you're making a check against your ally's DC. On a success, the target gains resistance 5 to either bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage, chosen when you use this ability. So this is a way to bolster your team's defenses. Add a lot, that's a lot of damage resistance to an ally for an action. I love this ability to protect your allies and to make up, very thaumaturge-like, to make up a vulnerability with this other feat, Invented Vulnerability, on your enemies. Orator's Filibuster is a very good exploration ability. You are capable of unleashing such an entrancing torrent of rhetoric and metaphor that it is all but impossible to look away from you. When you begin a conversation or similar attempt with the goal of making an impression, all creatures who are observing you become fascinated unless they succeed at a will save against the higher of your class DC or spell DC. So this is a great thing to do in exploration. I love doing this. I have a similar ability, I forget what it's called, with my bard character. Fascinating performance probably, or distracting performance, I think that's what it is, where you can kind of command attention. Everyone is looking at you, and if you have a sneaky character, they just go and unlock the hidden door, and you find out a bunch of secrets or get a bunch of loot or find a secret way around otherwise impossible encounter. Great for some exploration and also just really fun. I mean, I love this kind of stuff. It's very good for roleplay. I like seeing abilities that lead to roleplay as this one does. And the last feat to talk about here is a tale to believe in. You recite a tale of prowess that rewrites the combat unfolding around you. You attempt a counteract check against a mental effect that's currently affecting an ally within 30 feet using deception for the counteract check at half your level as the counteract rank. So another great support ability using your charisma-based abilities to help an ally out who is under the effect of, something presumably pretty bad. I really like this archetype overall. It is very cool in this very combat, strength, ranged weapon, blaster caster, war magic kind of book. To have something for those charisma-based characters to still, fit in to this overall, warmongering environment. I really like the idea of being the sort of sneaky propagandist who is getting in there, kind of messing up the enemy's plans and helping out their allies. Very fun stuff. And the last of these dedications that I want to talk about here is the Necrologist. Now, this one is rare, but wow, is it fun. Basically, if you don't want to wait to be a necromancer when that, comes out, do this in the meantime. First of all, look at how cool that artwork is. I love it, and I think so far, this is, I think, my favorite artwork in the game, so that is cool. And I love these abilities. Starting with Raise the Horde, once per 10 minutes. So I forgot to mention just in the overall precursor text here, you are kind of one with the undead, and you can raise a horde of summoned creatures. It's not exactly a summon spell, though as a prerequisite, you do have to have the ability to cast Summon Undead. And I should also mention, this starts at feat 6. It is not feat 2 like some of the other archetypes, which is why some of these numbers and abilities are going to look pretty big. You also cannot have another companion like a familiar or anything with this because you have that connection to the horde. And as a GM, if you were trying to do multiple summoned and familiars and everything, I would say, please stop. I don't want to have to keep track of this. Anyway, on to Raise the Horde. Okay, so Raise the Horde, once per 10 minutes. Your undead horde appears in an unoccupied space within 30 feet. Now this is a little problematic, and this is why the horde is going to be a little difficult to use. If we go look at the paragraph above, when raised, your horde is huge and has a speed of 20 feet. Blah, 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 skipping over some stuff. Though it's made of several undead creatures, it can't share the same space as other creatures, unless you have other feats, which we'll look at later. So it might be difficult finding a spot to raise your horde. But once you do, you can use the Mobbing Assault ability. Your horde has been raised. Each enemy in a 5-foot emanation around your horde takes 2d6 bludgeoning damage if your horde is of type zombies, or 2d6 slashing if it is a skeleton horde, with a basic reflex save against your spell DC, and then that does increase later. So, man, talk about a great battlefield kind of control or just massive damage ability. This is a lot of fun. The level 8 feat, Dismal Harvest, awesome. Free action. If your last action was a Mobbing Assault, which we just talked about, that reduced at least one living creature to 0 hit points, you gain 15 temporary hit points that last for 1 minute. That is not bad. But onto some more horde abilities like Grasping Corpses. Your foes are left reeling from the attacks made by the zombies or skeletons. A creature that is damaged by your horde's Mobbing Assault is off guard until the beginning of your next turn. That could be an incredibly massive debuff. If you are affecting a ton of creatures and they all take some damage, well, look at this. A bunch of off-guard enemies. That is awesome. With Death Guard, we do get into the ability for you and your allies to occupy the same space as your horde, becoming concealed to all creatures when you do so. That is super cool. So you can blend into your horde, offering protection and cleaning up some of those battle space, arrangement problems that we had earlier. This would allow you to use the horde in much smaller arenas and offer you and your allies protection. I love this. Dance Macabre is also very fun. 2 actions, you move your horde and you get to do the mobbing assaults while doing so. Now this does affect creatures, not just enemies, so mind where your allies are. A creature who fails the saving throw against mobbing assault is also repositioned to an unoccupied space of your choice adjacent to the horde's final position. Great battlefield control and damage, super fun, just love everything about this. And then both level 14 feats are very cool, but I really like Death Rattle. When the time comes for your horde to be returned to its temporary rest, its departure carries those nearby closer to death. You dismiss your raised horde, that's an action, which draws life energy toward it as it crumbles to the ground and fades away. Each living creature within your horde space or in a 5-foot emanation around it must attempt a fortitude saving throw against your spell DC or become drained 1 or drained 2 on a critical failure. So again, it says creature, not enemies, mind your allies, but what fun evocative abilities here. This giant group of undead collapses into the ground and you can just actually see the life force of surrounding creatures being drained and sunk into the earth with it. So fun. Now that is not all of the dedications in the book, but those are my 3 favorite, though I will say the gorilla dedication is very cool too, and I think would be great to combine with the toxicologist. So perhaps I'll have a look at that. What do you all think of these new dedications? What kind of classes do you think would combine well with them? Let's talk about that in the comments, and I'll see you next time.